And ain't you appreciated if you ate his farina and voted him a second term?
And how guilty would we feel if we went and destroyed a few microbes on an anthill in Africa?
And I bet if we were in church right now, I'd get a big amen.
And if he told you the truth, what would this stuff do to him?
And if I brought her in here, and she said, yes, Mr. Talbot, he did strike me with his left fist in my face, she'd be lying.
And if I came to you and said the same thing, then what would your explanation be as a doctor?
And if I were him, I would hide it right.
And if you were him and you were broke and your son had all that money, wouldn't you want to get your hands on it?
And I knew that if I told you that I was having doubts, that you would sabotage our whole relationship, which you did anyway.
And I thought that if I said how I felt, it would somehow make that day.
And I worried that I wouldn't get any more promotions if I spoke up, so.
I wouldn't push it if I were you.
And then, if it went bad, I could just walk away.
And they'd have that whole mountain if I painted the rabbits in high tops.
And what do you think she'd say if she saw how her child is living now?
What would happen if they all decided to rebel?
And what would happen if you did not?
What would you do if you were us?
At least if she ate Jack, she'd throw him up right after.
At this point, I'd set you up with a chimpanzee if it brought you back to the world.
Because if he drank the milk, he'd know that he's lactose intolerant.
But if I went home, what would you do? But if I were you, I would be hurt, angry, disgusted even.
But if I were you, I wouldn't take one step out that door.
But if she came back tomorrow and said she was sorry, I would be so fucking relieved.
But if you came out vigorously in defense of the president, it might convince the Judiciary Committee.
But if you were in South America with me, you would know exactly what will happen.
But there ain't much a man can say, except I'll miss her as much as I'd miss my own ma if she went.
Can you imagine what people would say if they saw us dancing together?
Can you imagine what would happen if we woke up the rest of his crew?
Can you tell me for certain that if we came out in the open, everyone would accept us?
Come on, what would you guys do if you were me?
Couldn't you support her even better if you studied in Moscow and got a job at Mosfilm?
They haven't to detail what would happen if they were hostile.
Do you know what would happen if I suddenly decided to stop going into work?
Do you realize what would happen if I handed my reports in your handwriting?
Do you think it would help if you went someplace so you could rest up a while?
I think Mr. Gerard would be able to persuade Mr. Kavanaugh to reconsider if he understood his own interests in the matter.
Dude, even if I spoke Korean, it wouldn't make any sense.
Even if she said yes, they still could not marry.
Even if they said yes, it would never work.
Everyone else would probably thank me if they knew I was the one who drained him of his life.
Fine by me, but if I were you, I wouldn't make a problem where there ain't one.
He couldn't find a working man if you drew him a diagram.
He knew if he went away, your mother would take you and your sister and give you a life outside of all that.
He said it would make it just too hard for him, and that if we came, he wouldn't see us anyhow.
He thought it'd be best if I spoke with you.
He would tell me these fantasies, and one of his favorites was, what would happen if he stuck a firecracker in somebody's mouth?
Hey, if I saw myself in clothes like those, I'd have to kick my own ass.
How long would it take me if I drove 300 miles an hour?
How would you feel if you were them?
How would you like it if we said you had small balls? What?
How would your parents feel if we said we were going to raise our child cat?
Hugo, James, would you mind if I spoke to Jack alone?
I begin to wonder what would happen if she left me.
I could really write my own ticket if I went back to Boulder now, couldn't I?
I'd love to see your mama's face if you brought her home for dinner.
If everyone listened to her, there'd be no janitors because no one would clean shit up if they had $1 million.
If he came from Hong Kong or Shanghai, he'd end up in San Francisco.
If he drank more, he'd be dead.
If he drove, I'd be dead in 3/4 of an hour.
If he had a brain, he wouldn't be tending bar.
If he said it, there'd be a fight.
If he traveled at the speed of light, he would come back in an hour.
If I drank the regular, I'd blow up like a balloon.
I drew a stick figure with an arrow pointing to it saying stick figure. You'd still be like, what did she draw?
I drew my dreams, I'd get arrested.
If I had 2 more manginas like you, I'd be a millionaire.
If I let you do anything, and if I promised never to tell your Uncle Juan, Julio, tell me, what would you do?
If it came to light, the great houses would rise against him.
If it had a normal presentation, there wouldn't be a cat involved.
If I told you I was going into business with my ex-husband, would you consider it a big deal?
If it went for these bars, I'd have you already.
If it went to trial, all the defense would have to do is call Sherwood to the stand.
If it were otherwise, I would not deliver the message.
I understood why Jack does what he does. I sure as hell wouldn't be sitting here.
If I was rich like what's his name, you would never have to work a day in your life.
If I were Natalia, I'd hide under the ring.
If I were her, I'd be pretty messed up.
If I were her, I wouldn't be here with you either.
If I were him, I would not keep you waiting.
If I were you, I would be smart.
If I were you, I would not give him up to a younger sister for all this tumbling downhill.
If I were you, I wouldn't be my first choice.
If I were you, I wouldn't use protection.
If I were you, I'd stick by the phone to find out where to meet us.
If she ate properly, she could manage it.
If she had a heart, this would break it clean in two.
If she knew what was going on in your head, she'd think you were sick.
If she said to you, Ross, I want you on this couch, right here, right now, what would you say?
If she told us her symptoms, where it hurts, when the pain first started, we could at least focus on a specific area.
If she wrote the drive-in, he'd be the double feature.
If she were still alive today, we'd all be together.
If they had a ballot, they'd be back in the mud.
If they knew who we were, we'd be dead already.
If they went there, they'd learn something about Miles' murder.
If they were creative, they wouldn't be in maintenance.
If this Commander Data were taking your Mima out for dinner, where would they go?
If we ate like this all the time, what would be wrong with that?
We drank piss, we drank it cold! If you went round the moon or round and round the garden like a teddy bear, it wouldn't make any difference.
If you drank less beer, bought fewer horses, you might be able to look your landlord in the eye, Narracourt.
If you saw this gringo again, would you recognize him in his vehicle?
If you saw what I saw, you'd want one in both hands.
If you studied half as much as you cheer, you'd be in great shape.
If you thought I was that advanced, would you ask me if I understood?
If you understood that, you wouldn't fight so hard.
If you wanted to get some cocaine around here, how would you do it?
If you were her, where would you guys go?
If you were him, would you want to share the stage with a sexy-ass astronaut?
If you were him, you'd want me dead for what I did.
If you were me, would you kiss her?
If you were us, what would you do?
I just thought if I was rich or famous, I could make them proud, and then they'd love me.
I just thought it'd be easier if I brought him over here.
I knew if I painted it snowing, it would, and it did.
I knew that if I turned round, however quickly, they would be gone, even if they spoke just at my ear.
I'll bet if she went after Sitting Bull, she'd bring him back.
I'm about to have a kid of my own, and it would kill me if he went through his whole life never understanding me.
Afraid, I didn't know what would happen if it came out.
Imagine what would happen if we killed them all.
I mean, even if we brought him back, would it do any good?
I mean, I would arrest us, wouldn't you, if you were them?
I mean, look, hey, if you came to me with this problem a week ago, or next week, I'd be able to...
I mean, maybe if she understood what the library means to this town, she could advise the family not to sell it.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Dawson, but if I were you, I wouldn't waste any more of my time.
Incidentally, wouldn't it be a lot safer if you drove my car and I drove yours?
In English, what would I be eating if I ate that?
Oh.
In fact, my sermon today asked the question, would you know God's voice if he spoke to you?
In the state I'm in, I'd probably kill myself if I drove.
I promised him that if he went to Earl Haraldsson, I would find a way to kill her.
It's all you'll let yourself say out loud, because if you said anything to the contrary, well, that would make you the most awful person on this rooftop.
I think if they saw a witch, they would, run the other way.
I think if we drank more, we might be able to maintain perfect equilibrium.
I think it would be better if she understood what you were going through.
I thought it might be nice if we ate lunch together from time to time.
I thought that maybe if I brought you your papers, that you wouldn't send me away and then we could all be together.
I thought you'd like him more if he spoke a little less.
I told Annie what would happen if she betrayed us.
I told him if he came up with the cash, I would.
It would be great if she were gone by lunch.
It would be if she were alive.
It would help if I was taller.
I warned them that they would be completely obliterated if they went, but they went anyway.
I wonder what would happen if we tried talking to it now.
I would be too if I drank oil.
I would certainly, if it came to it, prefer him.
That would hate me too if I were her. I would look at it if I knew what a cornice was.
Lane's dentures would drop out of his head if we came in with an additional buy.
Look, Mr. Reyes told me if I came down here, I would be taken care of.
Look, tell me, if you were her, what would you want me to do?
Mama would die all over again if she saw me right now.
I told them what would happen if they didn't leave us alone.
Maybe I'd come in more if I liked the material.
Maybe if you drank bourbon with me, it would help.
Maybe it would be better if you went back to school, got your head into your schoolwork, be with your friends.
It'd be better if she had a familiar face behind her.
It wouldn't be so bad if he drank vodka.
Mom said you'd pay Mom bucks if I drove you home from school.
Mr. Belly Rumble, if you were us and you cared about your friend's safety, what would you do?
I wouldn't come out perfect like that if you ate it.
Now, Biff, you know what you'd really think of me if I drank beer.
Now, if you had a treasure, where would you hide it?
Of course, but if I were you, I would leave the doctor alone until after he's eaten his breakfast because he's a very crude man.
Oh boy, I tell you, if I was rich, I'd never eat another chili dog.
Reavers might take issue with that philosophy, if they had a philosophy.
Said if I studied up, I could make mad cream.
Said she wouldn't get kebabbed if she brought you back.
She wouldn't leave if she knew I had kids.
Sometimes I think I'd be better off if I were dead. Mom.
So what would happen if I touched you now?
So you're saying that even if he came to light, with your family's resources, you could help me fix it? Yeah.
That if it went well, you would come in here trying to get a celebratory mud, and that if it didn't go well, you would try to get a sympathy mud.
Principal said if I painted my locker one more shade of green, he'd suspend me.
This would happen to Locke if we brought him back here?
Trusted me that if I came in here and had the chance to tell you guys the truth, that I could make this right.
Turns out I get pregnant if we drink out of the same cup.
So I thought it might be nice if I cooked you some breakfast.
What?
We'd have a good chance if we came at him from both sides.
Well, Charlie, maybe if you drew me a plan of the table instead of just 4 random measurements on torn-off bits of the age, I might know what I'm doing.
Well, even if he told her, he'd just lie to us about it anyway, right?
Well, he would be entitled to a share if he drove us all the way down there.
Well, I'd be so interested in that if I ate apples.
Well, if he came to me for spiritual advice, I'd say no.
Well, if I were her, I wouldn't be disappointed at all.
Well, if they spoke for us, they'd be labeled traitors as well.
Well, if you weren't busy, oogling girly pictures, you might actually get some work done around here.
Well, it would cheer me up considerably if I saw a lot of people wearing my button.
Well, Jennifer, my mother would freak out if she knew I was going up there with you.
Well, you'd have a better chance to prove it if you drove.
Well, if you might have to if you went with me.
What would happen if he came after his brother?
What would happen if he had a tree?
What would happen if I drank that?
What would happen if I knew something like that and didn't report it?
What would happen if it ever came down to a fight?
What would happen if it randomly deleted all of my work?
What would happen if they fired on one of our planes, General?
What would happen if they were brought near each other?
What would happen if we went down there to cop?
What would happen if you didn't get in?
What would happen if you had to go to prison?
What would happen if you opened your mouth at that speed?
Would you ask if you were him?
What would you do if you were them and you didn't find what you were looking for? Me?
What would you say if I told you I feel ready right now?
What would you think if you were her? When Suki told me she was coming here alone tonight, I thought it'd be a shame if she came without an escort.
Where would you go if you did go outside? Why would she lie if she knew it could kill her?
Without the tether, you know what happened got down there?
Wonder what would happen if she did.
Would it be better if we came back at another time?
Would it make you feel any better if you knew that what we're asking Matt here to do is a holy thing?
Would it make you feel better if we all stopped talking about Ross and Rachel?
Would it make you more comfortable if I got under the covers?
Wouldn't it be better if you cooked it a little first?
It'd be so annoying if it went wrong.
Would it make you feel better if we said no?
Wouldn't you be if you were me?
Would you dump a guy if he brought you carnations?
Would you feel more comfortable if I ate Raisinets?
Would you recognize that weapon of his if you saw it again?
Yeah, no, but if he said jump off a cliff, would you do that?
Yeah, maybe if you painted it all white, it might help raise your spirits.
Yeah, well, if she told you everything, you'd know he's been ducking me for the past 10 years.
Yeah, when we first met, you said that if I went out with you, I could drive a car on Mars.
You'd be pissed off too if you were me.
You'd know I'd love to, Aunt Jenny, but I'd have to get time off work and everything, and it's just...
I know that, dear, but I thought if they understood how important it was, they wouldn't mind.
You know, maybe if you ate more comfort food, you wouldn't have to go around shooting people.
You know what would happen if she reported it.
You're a liar, and if you told the truth, Mike would be alive.
You think that if you told me you were in trouble and your job was in jeopardy, that I'd give you a hard time about it?
You told me what would happen if we ever took him back.
You wouldn't know if I drew you a diagram.